I love Korra. It has some of the most profound and powerful moments in all of Avatar, and I'll ask for one last Korra good in the comments. Actually, no. Korra, not good. Korra, great. I'll not stand for people saying it's trash. It's just not. It has its weaknesses, as all shows do. And I want to explore those as much as its strengths, which is why we're fixing the final season. This is just a fun thought experiment. There are only two rules. One, they only got 13 episodes, so that's all we get as well. And two, we are fixing, not rewriting it entirely. It's easy to be the guy who says, oh, they should have just done something entirely different. But no, we're not gonna do that. We're working to make the story we already have better. So I see three issues with Season 4. 1. Let's be honest, Korrasami just wasn't really set up, or at least it wasn't enough for me. I mean, Nickelodeon was afraid that the moment a child saw two women kiss on a screen, they would immediately combust into rainbow confetti. So we're gonna fix that. 2. The, giant robot was weird, out of place, and tonally bizarre. And 3, Kuvira kind of bounces from sympathetic to cartoonish villain, and I think we can handle her better in just a few scenes. We've actually already fixed the previous 3 seasons, and you don't need to watch those videos if you don't want to. All you really need to know is 1, Korra has regained her waterbending and airbending after Ramon, but not her firebending and earthbending quite yet. 2, she's semi-banned from Republic City because of the Equalists, and 3, Opal is an airbender, but she's not a Beifong. Or she is a Beifong, but not an airbender. It doesn't really matter, it's whichever you prefer. But do go check out those other videos, they're linked up in the corner. Episode 1. After all these years. Just like in the series, we jump forward 3 years in time. Prince Wu is about to be crowned Earth King, Mako is his bodyguard, while Bolin and Varrick are working with Kuvira to unite the Earth Kingdom after the chaos in the wake of Zahir. We are introduced to Kuvira in that same iconic scene on the rail line, which is just fantastic, a brilliant way to introduce your main antagonist. But there is going to be one slight world building change here. So, in the show, supposedly every province of the Earth Kingdom fell into anarchy and chaos after Zahir killed the Earth Queen in Ba Sing Se, and now there's bandits everywhere. But the thing is, the Earth Kingdom is extremely decentralized politically already. Ba Sing Se falling apart would not cause the rest of it to fall into chaos. Like, imagine if Florida collapsed, it wouldn't mean that California collapses as well. But Ba Sing Se was still the biggest boy on the block, and if any of these outlying provinces started fighting amongst each other, then the Earth King could probably step in to stop them. So we're actually going to make it so that the chaos that the show talks about was the result of Earth Kingdom provinces picking up old grievances in a ton of little civil wars with nobody to stop them. This does 3 things. 1, it's more realistic. 2, it means that Kuvira isn't just extorting and blackmailing these states into giving up control so that they feel safe again. Yeah, she's still extorting them, but she's extorting, lords who want to wage their own little petty wars for selfish gain, wars that affect the common people the most. In the opening episode, she'll confront the governor, but this time she'll say something like, "Your people are running out of food, your borders are collapsing, you can't wage this little war of yours any longer. The question is not if your people will starve, but when. You'll stop this little tantrum, put down your grievances against the Yai province, and return to the fold of the Earth Kingdom. Your people will thank you for it. You'll remain in charge, but under my supervision." And 3, I actually think it's more interesting to have Kuvira go from someone who puts down warmongers in the name of unification and order and peace to becoming a warmonger herself. It'll also make Bolin and Varrick's moral decision to leave her cause more complex, because in the show, it's really just about them finding out the truth of how extortionate and blackmail-y Kuvira always was. In this version, they'll instead have to reconcile their own values with her actions as she begins pushing too far and taking states that aren't like this. In the show, they're just kind of lied to. We also see how decadent and disconnected Prince Wu is from his own people, even though he insists he's just like everyone else, and we're meant to see how antiquated the institution of the monarchy itself is, immediately juxtaposed with Kuvira's efficiency and meritocracy and inclusiveness. Opal, as in the show, doesn't like Kuvira, and this has caused a rift between her and Bolin. Elsewhere, Korra is wandering in the wilderness, having renounced her identity as the Avatar. She's managed to heal enough after Zahir to walk again, but she's lost emotionally and spiritually, losing cage fight after cage fight. So, episode 1 is basically the same. These characters are in the same places, and we've really just softened Kuvira's starting position. Episode 2, Korra Alone. This episode parallels Zuko Alone, centering on a single character's struggles when they feel most lost in themselves, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and it's literalized by them being lost out in the world. Some people have complained that it's dumb that Korra is struggling so much here because, I don't know, she went through harder things before and she was fine, but I think this really misunderstands trauma and Korra's arc. Trauma isn't a linear experience, and the path to recovery is rarely predictable, especially when you've been physically debilitated the way that Korra has. It has lasting psychological implications. We often feel out of control of our own bodies, and I think the show captures that really, really well. We see flashbacks of the past few years as she tried to heal at the South Pole, meditation and physical therapy and Katara's healing, and in this time she did manage to improve. She even managed to get back some inkling of the earthbending and firebending inside her again, the same way that she regained her waterbending in season 2. She can feel it inside her, just beyond the tips of her fingers, but she can't control the elements at all, and she certainly can't control the avatar state. Just like she feels barely in control of herself. "Of course I'm frustrated," she says. "A crazy man poisoned me and now I can't dress myself or cook for myself or do anything for myself. And this whole time my friends have been off helping the world while I'm stuck here with you and you can't even heal me. I'm sorry. That came out wrong. I'm tired, Katara. I'm so tired." People do come to visit her every so often and send her letters, but Korra feels so isolated that she stops replying to all of them, except Asami. We're meant to get the impression that these two have bonded over the last few years. I remember watching this when the series first aired and thinking it was odd that she wrote back to Asami, but hopefully in our rewrites of season 2 and 3 and 1, we've given that a little bit more of a build-up. Korra writes to Asami saying, "Don't tell the others I'm writing to you and not them. I mean, Tenzin is all busy and Marco just keeps talking about how excited he is for me to come back to being the Avatar, and Bolin just says all I need is a distraction. I can't handle that. It's like I've hit a wall. Sometimes I worry if I'll ever fully recover. You're the only one that seems to listen." Asami is her confidant in this scene, and we're meant to see a level of empathy from Asami that Korra doesn't get from others. There's a romantic subtext here too, but I didn't want it to be about sexual attraction. And when you look at the supposed evidence of them building up to this relationship in the series, a lot of it's just casual flirting between the two of them, which I think is a pretty shallow way to explore the relationship. It's got to be about this intense sense of isolation and shame after having lost so much in her place in the world, and Asami is the only one that seems to be able to break through. So Korra decides to leave. She's fed up, and she tells everyone that she's going to Republic City, but after being defeated by just a couple of bandits on the way, all her insecurities take over, and she begins that wilderness wandering. She can't get better, she can't return, so what is she to do but disappear? Korra cutting off her hair here resonates symbolically with that moment that Zuko does the same. In both cases, it's a rejection of their identity as much as it is them being unable to figure out who they should become. The only person Korra keeps in contact with throughout her wandering is Asami, sending her letters from place to place, and Asami keeps her secret from the others. Korra travels to the South Pole, to the spirit world, to the desert. She seeks out a dragon and badger moles, the original benders, hoping to reconnect with the Avatar state and the final two elements. And all the while, she keeps seeing this dark, chained vision of herself following her. This is the image of herself in the moment of her trauma. Her journeys across the world, though, end her up in those same fighting pits we saw at the end of episode 1. And it's here that she stops sending Asami letters, wanting to truly fall into hiding. Finally, she's led into the swamp, just like she is in the series, and to Toph. Again, episode 2 is virtually identical, with just a few tweaks to make Korra's journey align with our rewrite and how she's trying to get back to those elements, her identity, her sense of self, and to further that relationship with Asami, which is so important. Episode 3, the coronation. This episode plays out, again, basically the same. Prince Wu is due to be crowned, but we continue to see how immature, ineffectual, and inappropriate not only he is, but the institution of the monarchy. That's a crucial difference, right? So fantasy, including like Avatar, the first series, has this all you need is the right man on the throne approach, but season 4 explicitly says, no, the monarchy itself is antiquated and bad as a system, and Kuvira's speech highlighting that technology and innovation should be the way forward, you can't help but kinda want her to take power, and that's a really cool trick. Again though, we're gonna soften her rhetoric to 1, be clearly less villainous, and 2, actually make her more fascist, which is clearly the inspiration her character design is coming from. If you didn't get it from the whole I will bring order and uniforms and everything, Kuvira will say something like, and let me assure my fellow leaders of one thing. We will not interfere in your internal affairs, and we expect you not to interfere in the Earth empires, as we bring our people back together and reclaim our historic lands. See, dictatorships often slip into fascism when they take on this nationalistic, historical narrative, right? With representing the capital P people and capital L land, often as a populist way to frame their restoring order or seeking justice for historical wrongs. This leans into Kuvira's populism and shows how she's slipping from it just being about bringing order to bringing about her order. That's the difference, that there is now kind of a virtue to her herself being in charge. It's gotta be her. Whereas in the show, she seemingly frames herself as the aggressor from the start. So Mako and Bolin fall out over whether Kuvira is doing the right thing. Bolin is fully drinking the Kool-Aid here. Kuvira is uniting the Earth Kingdom and helping the common people, while Mako is defending Prince Wu, who sort of represents this antiquated world order. Meanwhile, Toph, quote, trains Korra by basically beating her up, and afterwards they sit down to talk. Korra explains how she's tried for so long to find what she's been missing, a new way to get back to who she was, but she can't find it. She asks, what made you want to go off the grid? And Toph says, I am more connected to the world than you've ever been. The roots and vines here, they run all over the world. I can see Sue and Lin and Zaofu and Republic City. I see all those I've forgotten, all those I love. You're blind compared to me though. Toph senses that there's still some metal inside Korra from when Zahir poisoned her, which Korra leaps at because this is an answer. This is why she's still been so ill. This is why she can't get back to who she wants to be, but Toph can't bend it out of her because Korra can't relax. And Toph tells her, maybe you don't want to get rid of the poison because it means you have an excuse for not going back to being the Avatar and you don't have to risk getting hurt again. Korra, shaken by that suggestion that on some level she doesn't want to go back, wanders off. Episode 4, The Calling. Korra has managed to throw her friends off her trail, but with Kuvira taking power, they decide they need to find her. Asami is worried because Korra's letters have stopped, though she only tells Tenzin this, not Mako and Bolin. Asami gives Korra's last known whereabouts, and Tenzin sends his kids to find her. After the Airbender kids leave though, we see Asami packing a bag too. Korra explores the spiritual swamp because Toph really isn't being all that helpful. She tries over and over again to connect with the fire and earth elements in spiritual ways. She even encounters a badger mole and mimics them for a time. But just as she exercises some small control over the metal in her body, she suffers from a flashback, that dark vision of herself, and then Zahir striking at her, collapsing in a spasm of pain and memory. We're only really adding in the badger mole here. It might not be necessary, but she needed to encounter one at some point in this story, I feel. Same with the dragon. The airbender kids follow Korra's trail, but when the trail runs dead, Jinora decides she's gonna try contact Korra through spiritual means and begins meditating. Iki gets captured by Earth Empire soldiers, but Milo manages to rescue her. Toph brings Korra to the Banyan Grove, this huge spiritual tree. Toph tells her, "Your problem is, you've been disconnected for too long. Disconnected from the people who love you, disconnected from yourself. I can sense everyone I need from here, and so can you." Following Toph's instructions, Korra touches and meditates with the Banyan Grove. She reaches out to the people she needs most, and at the same time, Jinora's eyes snap open with realization. So I'd like to frame this moment so that we think these two are connecting, Jinora and Korra, when it's actually revealed that Korra has connected with Asami, who has followed the trail on her own and was drawn into the swamp. When Korra imagines the people she needs and loves, she sees Asami first. See, there is a real problem with Korrasami in Season 4, okay? We don't get a single real scene between the two of them until Episode 7, over half the series gone, and even then, it doesn't amount to much more than light flirting. It certainly doesn't communicate anything deep about their personal relationship. Asami just gets mad at Korra over her dad. So in this, we're working to make Asami this emotional touchstone again, and give them more screen time together. Asami will help Korra patch up after her training as they talk. "I suppose you're here to tell me the whole world has gone to hell without me." Well, yeah, but that can wait till later. You stopped writing. Not exactly a post office in a swamp. Why are you out here? All alone. I met an old friend, you could say. Has it helped? I thought if I could find something out here that would help heal me. Nothing was working back in the South Pole. I thought, it's alright. You don't have to say. I just get so angry because I've tried so hard and I'm still not better. She puts her head in her hands. Why'd you come? Why'd you find me? Because every time you try to go at it alone, it doesn't work out. Huh. But I'm here now. I guess you are. And just like in the show, having reconnected with others and herself, Korra bends the poison metal out of herself, allowing her to re-enter the Avatar state and regaining control of the earth and fire elements. I didn't want to make this story about Korra getting the 4 elements. We've already had that with Aang, so I wanted to bring it back in, but with more meaning in a different way. In the final scene of this episode, Jinora reveals that she has sensed Kuvira's army moving towards Zaofu, and a lot quicker than they ever first suspected. Episode 5, Enemy at the Gates. This is the first episode that we really see the Spirit Vine laser that Varric and Bolin are working on. I am not a fan of this plot beat or aesthetic, whatever you want to call it, for 2 reasons. 1, it feels like bringing artillery into Middle-earth. It just doesn't fit. But more importantly, 2, this whole thing, right, is based on the idea that spiritual energy is a harnessable, quantifiable force of nature in the world that can be turned into a laser? No. Spiritual energy is a psychological, philosophical thing, even as far back as Aang's conversation with Guru Batik. The power of spirituality or the like was so much more subtle, expressed through bending ability and wisdom and the ability to control one's body, like Kyoshi used it to slow down her aging to 230 years. Turning it into raw power like this feels almost antithetical to the role spirits and spirituality have played in the series. Just like I don't like the laser battle at the end of Season 2, I don't like this. It is also meant to be a rough parallel to nuclear weapons. Varric even says, this power is too dangerous for anyone to have, but I don't know, I don't think the show explores that prospect particularly well, especially with how flippantly the laser is used. So no, we're gonna change this. I don't mind the idea of Varric building super weapons and having second thoughts, but we're gonna scale it back to something like the Schwere Gustav, the largest piece of artillery ever built by the Nazis that moved along railways. And also, here's why, it's the very inspiration for the railway gun that we see in a later episode. This doesn't feel as unnatural to the world, and it doesn't undermine the spiritual themes. As in the show, Varric will test this new weapon with greater range and destructive power than anything we've seen before, but Varric is going to have second thoughts that this can't fall into the wrong hands, only for Kuvira to insist that she is the right hands and threaten him. One funny side note about this though, is so every single time people tried to build these huge artillery guns to be terrifying, they always failed. They were useless, they never worked in battle, and they just always fell apart and were super expensive failures. I love it. So they're not actually threatening, but this is fiction. Kuvira demands Zaofu join the Empire, and when Suyin refuses, Kuvira says, alright, I'll just take it by force. Bolin and Varric are conflicted. They were on board with stabilizing the Empire, but not conquering regions that weren't doing anything, that weren't waging war like Zaofu. The two decide to abandon the cause, but here, Zhu Li betrays them and they're captured. Suyin implores Korra to go stop Kuvira herself, just like in the show, but Korra is reluctant and she'll say something like, I don't know. Last time I got involved in politics because of my friends, it didn't turn out well. The other nations appointed Kuvira. They should be involved. But fine, I'll talk to her at least. See if I can make her turn back. Here, she's thinking back to the Water Tribe civil war. Korra parleys with Kuvira, but it doesn't work. Korra returns only to find Suyin and her two sons have already left to try and assassinate Kuvira. Episode 6. The Battle of Zaofu. This is probably my favorite Korra episode. It is perfect from start to end. Suyin and her sons are captured after trying to assassinate Kuvira, who's enraged that their peace was broken. Opal wants to attack Kuvira, damning her airbender oath of non-aggression, but Jinora insists she should keep it. Kuvira challenges Korra to a duel for control of Zaofu, and Korra initially refuses. The other nations have to be involved, but when Kuvira says, well, alright, I'll just take it anyway, Korra agrees, reluctantly. Partly because she has no choice, and also because she wants to prove herself as the Avatar again. And then, Korra gets absolutely nailed in a brilliant scene. This moment where Kuvira says, like, fight me, use whatever you want, even the Avatar state. It is such a good tone setter and moment for our villain, really establishing the threat she poses. The thing is, even without the poison, Korra is out of practice and still mentally unstable. She hallucinates a dark vision of herself in the middle of the fight, and Zaofu falls. Asami watches in horror. What's wrong with her? We got the poison out. I don't understand. Asami rushes to pick Korra up in the last moments, dragging her away while the airbender kids whip up a whirlwind to help them escape. Zaofu surrenders. In the meantime, Bolin and Varric make a daring escape together. There's not much else to it. I wish I could spend more time in this episode because it's so damn good, but there are no big changes. Episode 7. Reunion. Korrasami and crew make it back to Air Temple Island across from Republic City. Mako and Prince Wu are hiding out together. It comes out that Korra wrote to Asami, but not Bolin and Mako. Asami defends Korra, but Korra doesn't know how to explain it, why she felt the way she did. She apologizes, but Mako walks off, feeling betrayed after he wrote all those letters to her too. One difference with our version of Season 4 is that Asami's father doesn't play a role. He doesn't really exist. See, in our version of Season 1, Asami was the equalist owner of Sato Industries, which, by the way, was the creator's original intention before they backed off from it. So we don't have Asami's conversations with her father, and Asami also still has ties to the equalist factions who help rule Republic City. It's only with those connections that Korra is temporarily allowed back in. See, in our version, the Equalists weren't sort of wiped out, they were sort of incorporated into the government. Asami, the Airbenders, and Korra talk about Zaofu and what Kuvira has become, a dictator. Korra feels ashamed and guilty for not stopping her, and even though everyone tells her not to worry, she still feels it, that it's her responsibility. Prince Wu is kidnapped by Kuvira's forces, and they chase them across the city. As they do, Korra blames Mako for losing him as the king's bodyguard, but this only inflames the distance between them. They manage to rescue Prince Wu, but only just. At the same time, Varrick and Bolin are sneaking past an Empire checkpoint. They learn that Kuvira is coming for Republic City. Now, there's a weird detail at this point in the show. We also learn that Kuvira is rounding up firebenders and waterbenders into camps. Yeah, like it's pretty clearly meant to be a Holocaust parallel, if you didn't get the Nazi comparison yet. But this always felt really out of place for me, because they don't really do anything with this. It never comes up again. And even though Kuvira has a nationalistic streak, we never see that paired with prejudice towards non-Earth Empire citizens. Like, she never blames them for the Earth Empire falling apart, which is a common fascistic scapegoat tactic, right? Like, this group of people are why our country is in chaos. It's a tiny detail, but I'd probably just replace it with a prison camp for rebels or something. In the show as it stands, I think this is a pretty clumsy bit of commentary, even if you are doing the fascist thing, because if you're gonna do a Holocaust parallel, I think it should be done better than this. But we don't really have the space in this series, so instead we should just probably cut it. Episode 8, Beyond the Wilds. Now, okay, technically, episode 8 is Remembrances, which is a flashback episode. It's not very good, it's not important, it doesn't do anything to further the story, so I'm not going to bother with it. Keep it if you want, or discard it, I don't care, I thought it was annoying. In our version, Varrick and Bolin arrive and explain that Kuvira has set up this Schwere Gustav superweapon, which we're gonna call the Colossus, and they're planning to take Republic City too. Now, the show kinda makes it sound like this is purely about law and order and power for Kuvira. And see, while fascist governments did rise with populist promises of law and order, their expansionism is usually justified by appealing to reuniting or liberating the capital P people or capital L land that they feel entitled to because of historic ties. See Russia today. Now, the show does pay lip service to the land idea once, but if the show wants to comment on nationalism or fascism, then I think it should have delved more deeply into the sentiments that are behind them, especially given this kind of expansionism doesn't come from just one person's desire for power, which, again, the show kinda suggests it does, but a dangerously widespread cultural belief. That's why we're gonna have Kuvira emphasize these ideas in the historic Earth Kingdom lands and reuniting their people. It's a small tweak. Even then, it's not a perfect parallel, right? Like, fascism exists almost inherently in opposition to democracy, and we don't have democracy here, we've got a bunch of monarchies. I still think, though, that this change in focus does do the original intention of her character more justice. Asami, Tenzin, and the Republic City Council reach out to the Water Tribes and Fire Lord Izumi, who I always wanted to see more of. I wanted to see what the Fire Nation had become. They ask for help to take the fight to Kuvira, but Izumi, as in the show, insists that the Fire Nation has made war too much a part of its history, and intends to stay out of it. Once again, people pressure Korra to go fight Kuvira, but Korra says she can't and sort of breaks down and leaves. Tenzin says leave her, but hours later, Asami finds Korra in the forest outside the city. I don't know what's wrong with me. I thought the poison was gone. I thought I'd go back to normal, but I still see him. Zahir. It's like I'm not in control of my own body. Maybe it's not as easy as that. I'm over people telling me it'll get better. It hasn't. It won't. Tenzin is tired of me being like this. Mako is angry at me. Tenzin isn't angry. Mako is. Mako is just being Mako. Look, sometimes there's a big difference between what we know and what we feel. Maybe you know you're safe. Maybe you know that your body is okay again, but you don't feel it, and that doesn't mean that those feelings aren't real. Korra looks up. Yeah. I think I want to face Zahir. Tenzin takes Korra to Zahir's prison and asks her, do you think you can do this? They have a touching moment of mentor to apprentice, and she goes in to face Zahir. Honestly, this episode is a little bit of a mess in the series. Jinori gets taken by the spirit vine, so they need to get her back, but to do that they need to go into the spirit world, but Korra can't, and that's why she goes to face Zahir, but It all feels a little bit contrived and distracted and weirdly paced from the main story. I think this is a more intimate exploration of Korra's trauma and a more meaningful reason to go talk to Zahir. Bolin tries to make up with Opal, but she will not have any of it. He worked for Kuvira. Mako comforts Bolin, but doesn't have any great advice on women, it seems, and neither does Prince Wu, making the whole situation worse. At the same time, Varric and Asami enter a tense, unfriendly working relationship to help stop Kuvira and shore up the city's defenses. Korra faces Zahir in the same way that she does in the show. I think it's a really great moment, good visuals and dialogue, and it holds a lot of meaning. Zahir hates Kuvira, this tyrant who has risen up in his wake, and he offers to help Korra bring her down. In the show, this moment is all about reconnecting with Rava, but personally, I just don't put that much stock in Korra and Rava's relationship. You can go watch my video on beginnings to understand why further. But she faces up to Zahir, this person who has caused her so much trauma, and in doing so, she regains a sense of control over herself. After that, he helps her meditate into the spirit world, connecting with the past avatars and understanding her own pain better than ever before, letting go of her guilt, and hopefully giving her the ability to face Kuvira as well. This episode closes with Opal and Bolin making up, but only when Bolin promises to help rescue the Beifongs. Episode 9, Operation Beifong. The crew tracks down Kuvira's huge-ass supercannon. Toph turns up to help, but things are tense between her and Lin. During the fight, Korra and Mako have to rely on each other, and together they rescue the Beifongs. But they have to leave when Kuvira and her army close in, just as the superweapon test goes off and they can see it blow apart a mountain. I gotta be honest, I always felt like Toph was underutilized in this scene, that they kinda held her back because she was so OP, but that's really a little bit contrived, isn't it? So we're gonna have Toph fight Kuvira while the others get away, and Kuvira is gonna have to make a calculated retreat. But even Toph is gonna have to escape too when the rest of the army arrives and it becomes just all too much and she vanishes into the ground. In the aftermath, Lin and Toph make up and talk about the past. Mako and Korra apologize and admit to their wrongs. Back in Republic City, Varric and Asami are inventing some kind of machine, though we don't get to see what it is. In the show, it's these weird hummingbird machines, but we're gonna do something a little bit different with it. One detail about this episode that I always kinda hated was Julie, okay? It turns out she was faking the betrayal and actually loves Varric unconditionally. No. See, it was more interesting to have Varric's constant mistreatment of Julie turn her against him, motivating him to reflect on his behavior afterwards. Whereas this just kinda says, oh, Varric can actually get away with anything. So, no, Julie is going to stay with Kuvira in this episode. Episode 10, Kuvira's Gambit. Prince Wu and Mako evacuate the city, and Republic City calls up its navy. Now, Prince Wu does have an arc in the series. He has to live amongst the common people, and he learns to see what really matters in the world. His character's fine, he's kind of in the background, and so he's gonna do all the same stuff that he does in this episode. Kuvira has already seized much of the surrounding land in our rewrite, so they haven't been able to sabotage the railways and prevent the Colossus from moving forward. Because of this, though, they do set out to destroy the superweapon before it ever gets into range of Republic City. They go with a few airships, a sky bison, and bombs, and just like in the show, it goes wrong. The airships are shot out of the sky by this huge cannon, none of the bombs make it, and they flee back to Republic City. Luckily though, in the chaos, they manage to kidnap Bata Jr., Kuvira's lover and her second in command. When Kuvira arrives at Republic City, she obliterates the navy from a distance, taking out the ships one by one. It's all a display of force and power, a warning. The ships fire in return, but they simply don't have the range. Kuvira issues an ultimatum to the city. These lands, she says, were Earth territory many years before, for as long as history remembers, till they were taken from us and our people. By war and tyranny, and even in our victory, our people were kept from them and their birthright. The United Republic is the stunted child of politicians and monarchs who know nothing of what it means to lose their home, their families. We offer you now a chance to return home, to join your brothers and sisters. Those who rule you might resist for selfish reasons, but we come here as liberators. Lay down your arms. The Republic City Council, partly made up of Equalists after Season 1, sees this as just more Bender war and expansionism, just like Amon said, and they refuse to surrender. Korra intervenes and tries to calm everyone down. Just give me one more chance to talk to Kuvira. They allow her that, and Korra asks Kuvira to leave. She even allows Baatar to talk with her, but the man communicates their position through coded language, and Kuvira tearfully orders to fire on their location, killing Baatar and severely injuring Asami. The council, urged on by Asami, says that they will not surrender, not after everything the Equalists fought for. Episode 11, Day of the Colossus. After the explosion, everyone is separated. Asami and Korra together, Bolin and Marco, Tenzin and Len, the kids too. Now, this episode in the show is mostly centered around trying to destroy the Colossus till Hiroshi Sato, Asami's dad, sacrifices his life so that they can get inside. But we have neither the Colossus nor Hiroshi Sato. By the way, one other thing about the Colossus, I could just never buy that it was a threat. It was such a clumsily built thing, and when it's like getting tripped up, it looks so inept. No. So, anyways, Kuvira's forces enter the city and the fight begins. The leadership evacuates with Tenzin to Air Temple Island. Every so often, the Colossus cannon will take out their positions, leveling the city before Kuvira's soldiers move in. Marco and Bolin decide that they need to take out the Colossus. They find a sky bison and fly off. Meanwhile, Varric sets off a number of traps for enemy forces passing through the city, electrical tripwires and bombs, that sort of thing, insisting that they just need to lure the enemy further into the heart of Republic City. Korra points out that Kuvira always stays on the front lines herself, and the two sneak past the lines, hoping to take Kuvira out. Asami is injured, and Korra has to support her the whole way, but Asami insists that she wants to stay with her. She manages to point out enemies several times, saving Korra's life. They manage to find a quiet ruin of a building and take a break from the fighting to help wrap up Asami's leg, explosions echoing in the distance. "It's my turn to take care of you," says Korra. "You've got more important things to worry about than me." There's silence for a moment. "All those years, writing me letters, why did you come to find me in the swamp?" "I told you. Kuvira just declared she was in charge and I was worried. Everyone else came looking because they needed the Avatar back." "Yeah, we all did, I guess. I was just wondering if... Well, you could have waited. You could have waited till Jinora found me, so maybe you came because I missed you." "Yeah, but I missed you in that way. In every way." This is basically them both saying that they care about each other, but more than that, it's romantic. There's also a symmetry between the Banyan Grove and here when Asami helped Korra heal. In this moment, they'll be found and attacked. Korra will beat them off and get Kuvira's location. Korra insists Asami stay behind while she's injured, that she has to do this herself and she can't worry about Asami if she's going to fight Kuvira. The episode ends with Korra finding her enemy. "Kuvira, I'm here," she declares. Episode 12, The Last Stand. Kuvira talks to her straight. "We've already done this, Avatar. I beat you." Korra bids her one last time to stand down and let the other nations decide her fate, but Kuvira says she'll have to take her down herself if that's to happen. "Nobody can say I didn't give you a chance," says Korra, entering the Avatar state. Kuvira orders her soldiers to stand back. "I've done this before." At the same time, Marco and Bolin are trying to take down the Colossus cannon. They fight their way past lines of Kuvira's soldiers, and their movements flash between the past and present, a symmetry between their find now and how they trained alongside each other for pro-bending when they were younger. Varric, the Airbenders, and Lin all find each other in the city. Varric insists they have a plan, grinning at a covered machine in the city square. Korra is holding her own in a way that she couldn't before at Zaofu, but it's relatively evenly matched between the two of them. Even with all the elements and the Avatar state, Korra is well out of practice, while Kuvira is battle-hardened and isn't injured. She didn't just get out of a massive explosion. She mostly avoids Korra's blows, hoping to wear the Avatar down. Bolin and Mako fight their way up to the superweapon. They can see it being ready to fire once more. We get more of these flashbacks between the two brothers as they fight, all the times Mako defended Bolin when they were younger on the streets of Ba Sing Se. Bolin pushes a spread of lava underneath the Colossus cannon, but it's not enough. The two break inside into its inner workings, and Mako begins unleashing a torrent of lightning, just like he kinda does in the show. Kuvira's forces are taking the city street by street with tanks and mechs, but for every tank they destroy, it feels like two more rise in their place. Lin says, "You'd think I shed enough blood for this damn place. Maybe it's waiting till I die here too. Hopefully not today, sister." By this point in their duel, both Korra and Kuvira are injured, stumbling through the city ruins, but Korra does have the upper hand. Kuvira insists that Korra will have to kill her. "I'm not going to kill you," she says. "You're going to call off your army and surrender. We can end this, Kuvira. If you want to end this, then come do it yourself." Kuvira attacks Korra, but Korra brushes it aside, approaching her slowly. Back with Mako and Bolin, the superweapon is sinking into the lava, overloaded and about to explode. Mako is still blasting it with lightning, trying to stop it before it goes off and kills more people, but he realizes it won't be enough. He looks to Bolin. He orders him to get out. He says that it's his job to take care of his little brother. Bolin insists that he won't leave him, but Mako blasts him out of the machine, right as the superweapon explodes, killing Mako in the process, but not before it lets off one last shot. That last shot fires directly at Korra and Kuvira, and Korra, sensing the huge caliber bullet coming for them with her airbending, spins to protect Kuvira. She enters the Avatar state, rending the metal from metal and controlling the inferno around them. A blazing storm of red and gold and white. We still get that iconic Korra scene that so vividly encapsulates Korra's character arc. She goes from someone who is just looking for the right person to punch to someone who puts her life on the line to defend even her worst enemy. At that same moment, Varrick reveals what he and Asami were working on. As Kuvira's army is drawn into the city square, an EMP goes off and deactivates a lot of Kuvira's tanks and mechs. This gives the Republic City forces just enough of an advantage to turn the tides. In the confusion. See, how the laser went off in the original version of Korra and Kuvira's fight always felt a little bit clumsy to me, that Korra walks into this place and then there's a giant gun in front of her and Kuvira's up at the top and pulling it. It just felt a little bit contrived and odd. I don't know what it was about it. But I do like the conversation that kind of follows in its wake. So they're sitting in the ruins of Republic City in the wake of this blast. There are some lines that I didn't really like all that much. Kuvira basically confesses that her own parents abandoned her, and it's implied that this is why she turned into a dictator, that she wouldn't stand by when her nation needed guidance just like she needed guidance as a kid. Again, this seems to diminish the role of the people and the land in nationalistic and fascist ideas, and instead focuses on one person's childhood insecurities, when that wider cultural context is so important. It's odd, it's a clumsy comparison. And then there's this ham-fisted stuff about Korra being poisoned when Kuvira wouldn't know about any of that. So this conversation is going to just focus on the other parts of that, the something else. Kuvira is going to say, she didn't want war, that the Avatar was gone and someone needed to do something, so she did. Korra empathizes with that, like she does in the show, and she admits that the two of them are similar. They both have that drive to take action, to protect others when they have the power to do so. It's a responsibility. Not like this though, Korra insists. This is the culmination of Korra's arc in our rewrite. In Season 1, she learned that sometimes it's better to empathize and listen than fight. In Season 2, she learned that it wasn't always up to her to decide how the world organizes itself, even as the Avatar. She can't just choose to kill Kuvira. In Season 3, she saw the importance of self-determination. And this brings us here, at last, to this moment. Kuvira calls off the last of her forces and is taken into custody. Prince Wu is inspired by Mako's sacrifice and does the same as in the show. He abdicates, with the regions becoming loosely connected democratic states. Bolin is heartbroken with the death of his brother, but he's comforted by Opal. The city begins to rebuild itself. Now, unlike in the show, we don't have that new spirit portal, which was an interesting idea with beautiful, fantastic visuals, but ultimately doesn't really work in this rewrite, not without the spirit vines or super weapon the way the show does it. Mako's funeral kinda replaces Julie and Varric's marriage, which I do realize makes it a bit of a more somber ending, though maybe they reconnect after Kuvira's fall. Tenzin and Korra have the same conversation they do in the show about how she's transformed more in the last few years than many avatars did in their entire lifetime. Korra remarks how the pain helped her understand people, even Kuvira more. Bolin and Opal decide to travel the world together, that Bolin needs to be away from the place that he and Mako spent so much time together. So maybe the happiness streak kinda comes from their relationship working out. Korra and Asami meet up a few weeks later. Asami is healed, and the two openly talk about their feelings. Korra says she thinks the Avatar just needs to go back to being the bridge between humans and the spirits, that in all her travels it's always the spirits who lose out, that things could have gone very differently in another world. She says she needs a vacation, that Asami should come and they should call it a date. Asami blushes and asks where. Korra asks if she's ever wanted to see the spirit world. The last shot is of them at the South Pole, entering a brilliant beam of light. This is fundamentally the same, right? It keeps the integrity of the story, but I think we do it in a more thematically cohesive way, with more narrative build up to the beats that really matter, like Korrasami. Now, I gotta be honest, I thought for a long time about how I was gonna do this, because there's something really interesting to me with Korra. See, Legend of Korra has a thematic undercurrent about the place of the Avatar in a modernizing world. You know, in Season 1 we reflect on class status as a bender, and she is the ultimate bender, to conflicts being so complicated that the Avatar can't solve them, you know, not on their own, and that's the Water Tribe Civil War, to the Avatar's institutional authority and whether or not she actually deserves it in Season 3. Season 4 could have had Kuvira be the good guy, with Korra reflexively defending the monarchy or the states, you know, the people who have been in power for so long, because that's the way things are meant to be, and supposedly she's meant to keep the world in balance, only to realize that Kuvira is democratizing and modernizing the places she's taking over, and that Korra, she's actually on the wrong side of history this time. And then at the end, deciding the Avatar should be a spiritual figure again, which we kind of did at the end there. It'd be a real full circle if it played out like this, from Korra being an Avatar who just wants to fix the world through raw power, to someone who understands the nuances of power and restraint, to minimizing her own role. But, I mean, that would have required a greater rewrite than I felt was fair for the series. So, here we come to the end. We've done all 4 seasons, it was a lot of fun. I really didn't think I would get through this so quickly, but my goodness, there we are. Especially because it's taken me years to do the other series, you know, the world building, the different nations. I've done 3 of them in like 4 years or something like that, and people are going, when are you getting to the last one? I will, I'll get to it. In the meantime, I have a completed series that I did in the last few months. What did you think of the series? I think looking back, Season 2 is probably the best rewrite. Thinking back, you know, I don't think I quite addressed the Amon conflict as well as I could have, or, you know, the Equalists more broadly and the ramifications of what happened afterwards. But yeah, it is a really hard story to do. I think it required more time than we really had, and I just couldn't quite figure out a way to work around it. I still think it's pretty good. It's got a lot of really good beats in it, and a bit of focus maybe. But yeah, no, I mean it's not perfect. But I do like this version. I do like this version. I do like Season 2, and then Season 3 is just of course amazing, because of course it is. Anyway, stay nerdy, and I will see you in the future.